All right, good evening, everyone. Hope you're all safe and well. Tuning in to FDG-TV. This is our third episode of the 2021 iteration. I almost forgot what year it is. It's the kind of week I'm having, ladies and gentlemen. I've been having, it's been a very busy week. I'm very tired. But yes, we're here tonight for another episode of FDG-TV. Welcome, first of all. If you've not been to this live chat before, our whole ethos, this whole setup is all about getting people together to talk about academic research, predominantly around the FDG conference, but larger kind of talking points in and around that. Of course, a lot of things have been going on, and I imagine for a lot of you who are of the academic persuasion, the key thing is that the academic year is now over or very close to over, so hopefully we're all breathing a little sigh of relief and maybe nursing whatever ailments we've accumulated, both physical or otherwise, over the last few months. But yes, we've got really fun show lined up for you tonight. But first of all, what I'm going to do is, of course, I'm going to bring in my wonderful co-host, Anne Sullivan. Anne, how are you?
Doing great, Tommy. How are you doing?
Let's try that again. Anne, how...
I'm doing awesome.
You sound, like, to be fair, I think you sound much more pumped. Like, I'm quite tired, whereas for you, it's because it's like 9 o'clock here in the UK, whereas for yourself over in the US, it's
4 p.m.
Sorry.
Yeah, I have a exciting evening of playing Pokemon Snap ahead of me, so, you know.
Right. So, how is Pokemon... this is going to completely deviate from whatever we've got planned.
Antonius is yelling already.
Antonius is already going to be yelling at us. But like Pokemon Snap, because I played Pokemon Snap on the N64 for like 10 minutes when it originally... And this is new Pokemon Snap, which...
I'm sorry. I'm still trying to process that you only played Pokemon Snap for 10 minutes.
So I'm a late Pokemon bloomer, if you will. That's a really weird sentence to say out loud. I didn't really get into Pokemon when it first came out, and in fact I didn't actually play a full Pokemon to completion until the last year. I played Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu on the Switch. That's the first one I've actually properly played from start to finish. So yeah, I'm quite late to the Pokemon thing. I hear it's popular.
Yeah, I mean, I also hear it's popular, although Pokemon Snap is much more than... I mean, obviously it's Pokemon branded, but it's so little in common with the other types of Pokemon games because you're taking photos and exploring these beautiful areas and being able to interact with what's going on around you. It's much more discovery based, and there are no Pokemon battles. So highly recommend it if you're into that sort of thing.
Sounds very chill.
It is very chill.
Just is it just taking photographs and then what is there... somebody grading it based on like some sort of artistic merit?
Yep.
Grading
you got the professor at the end who's like, how centered are they? How close are they? Are they doing something funny or interesting? Then you can also post your pictures so other people can see them and you can compare. And as you can tell, this month's episode is brought to you by new Pokemon Snap, out now for Nintendo Switch.
Nintendo, call us. Get that sweet branding in.
Yeah.
Excellent. I think my Nintendo game at the moment is Monster Hunter Rise, because I've been bit by the Monster Hunter bug recently. I've finally kind of understood why people like that so much. And it's the complete antithesis of... You can take photos of the monsters if you want in Monster Hunter. There is actually a camera feature, but it's very rare that you want to do it because there's this giant like bunny rabbit from hell that's like 15 feet tall ready to attack you, and you're just like, hold that pose as it's like running towards you. So it's like, no, we're not going to do that. But yeah, good times already. The production chat is clearly pleased with our discussions of Pokemon Snap.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I suppose we should probably get on to today's episode. What is it? Today's episode? This was reflecting on academia, on research, and on our own work. And so what we've got is we've got a wonderful set of guests from a variety of different corners of the kind of games rather, not just necessarily AI, but games research space. And, you know, all of us have experienced some element of the kind of academic, the academic life, whether we've, you know, some of us are PhD students, still ongoing candidates, some are PhD graduates, some have, you know, went into tenured positions in teaching or untenured, depending on where you are in the world. And just, I thought what we did was we decided to put together this whole show, which is sort of reflecting on a lot of the experiences that we've had, the things that are unique or curious as a result of this lifestyle, and then subsequently like the good and the bad and maybe areas that we can improve. And yeah, just reflecting on it, because we do a lot of weird stuff.
We do. And also, I mean, everybody's been affected in the last 15 months. But one of the things we'll definitely be talking about, I think it's been 15. One of the things we're definitely going to bring up in this show is kind of how academia has dealt with the pandemic, and, you know, as things are starting to the different quarantines are starting to lift, where are we going to go from here? Because now is a good time to start thinking about that.
Yeah, and I think we broke it up into two big topics. Like, first of all, was really looking at conferences, which, you know, given the branding is kind of apt. But also, like, you know, the past year or so has been really interesting in like how do conferences continue to run when people can no longer even be next to one another, never mind trying to travel from one side of the world to another to present your 20-minute presentation for a research. You know, when you start thinking about it, it's an absolutely ridiculous notion. I love it.
Hold the discussion, Tommy. Bring on our guests.
Yes, we should get to that.
Get started yet.
I know. Sorry, our guests are far more interesting and have much more to say on this. But just when you really begin to unpack it, it's like, hang on, I flew all the way over the world, halfway around the world, to talk 20 minutes about this, and then the second segment we're actually talking about is the sort of the doctoral experience, particularly if you're a PhD candidate, and that's also, like, I think something that, I mean, I can't speak a lot to this because I don't interact with a lot of PhD students on a day-to-day at the moment, given my change in my career, but, you know, that dynamic working with your supervisor and trying to actually continue your studies in the world as it has been for the last year, I imagine, has been not as straightforward as it usually is. And that isn't to say that being a PhD student is a particularly straightforward process.
Yeah. All right.
Right. I'm gonna move over here, and I will let our top production team start to bring in our wonderful guests. So yeah, we're going to start off with our first segment of the evening, or morning, or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And this is going to be, we're talking about conferences and the challenges faced in trying to get these conferences all to come to light and still deliver to you wherever you are on this big wonderful marble of a planet. So let's welcome our first two guests of the evening. We have Gillian Smith, who is an associate professor at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, as well as Laura Levy, who is the research director at the Gaming and Esports Applied Research, or GEAR, at the Georgia Institute of Technology. And I will do the deliberate, we've got to do that. You can't hear it, but we actually have the soundboard playing the music for you.
Excellent, thank you.
Evening, everyone. How are we all doing?
Good. How are you, Tommy?
Great. Yeah. How's it going?
I am tired. I'm very tired.
You're not supposed to admit that,
Food.
I know I'm not supposed to admit that, but I thought, no, we're just reflecting on our experiences, and yeah, that's where I am right now. I'm just finishing my coffee at this point, just to kind of see me through the rest of the night.
Coffee, good choice.
Yeah, always good at 9 p.m. Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm getting double audio and my brain is overloading. Is that something someone can help me with?
I'm
Oh,
not.
no.
Are you listening to the stream at the same time? I don't know.
No. Okay. All right. I think I fixed it. I changed the source. Okay. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Georgia Institute of what?
You're just like, oh, big booming echoes.
Hi. Mhm.
Hi, Laura. Hi, Gillian. Welcome to the show. Also, just public shout out to Gillian for her background.
It's very good.
I try.
It is very good. All right. So, welcome to our show.
Marvelous
to
production.
Tommy's, yes, to FDG Tommy TV. And we went, so I talked to you before about this, but what we're hoping to talk about in this segment is conferences. And, over the last year, 15 months, we've seen that shift to
Time has no meaning.
Age of my life.
Yeah, that last era. We've seen this shift to virtual conferences, and I feel like now's a good time to reflect on what worked, what didn't work, and how we might move forward from this. So I know that you both organized or helped organize conferences last year during the pandemic. And I'm just curious to hear from both of you about, what were some of the challenges you faced, and was there anything that was actually easier because it was online?
Yeah.
Laura, go for it.
Sure. All right. So if anybody attended IEEE VR last March, that was a conference co-hosted by Georgia Tech and UGA. So all credit goes to those conference organizers because they were actually doing the planning. But because this happened in mid-March, they had about 2 weeks to take a in-person conference to online. And because it's VR, the idea was, well, let's just do it basically in VR. So I was leading a research initiative that was sponsored by Mozilla to understand how people can use social VR spaces or web-based VR spaces, if you've used Mozilla Hubs before, to try to add that social component. But at the beginning of all of this, we didn't even know what these online conferences would look like. So IEEE VR actually has the title of being the largest academic conference put online to date. I don't know if that's still the case, but at least it was at the time. And that research was published in Frontiers in Virtual Reality. So that journal article came out a couple months ago. We have a lot of tips and tricks that we tried to put in there as a way for other people to understand what was happening. But the main research findings were people really missed coffee breaks. So while it was easier for people to network, and I really was impressed by the way that we could have lay people, because it was open free. We turned it from a paid event to a free event. We had a lot of enthusiasts coming in from social media. So it was great to see the general population interacting with academic people. And that's great, that democratization of it, because a lot of that research is funded by public dollars anyway. And it created a lot of really fun instances as me as a researcher in Mozilla Hubs, my little avatar just hiding, where you'd have like some forefather of VR, like the person who created X or coined this term, with a Twitter person arguing with them because you just don't know who you're talking to. So that was actually a really big positive, I thought, out of these conferences. I don't know if necessarily want that in the future or like how you actually port that into in-person, but that was a really interesting artifact that came out of IEEE VR.
Yeah, and Gillian, I don't know if you have similar experiences.
Yeah, and so I was supposed to be local arrangements chair for AID in 2020, which was the Artificial Intelligence and Interactive Digital Entertainment Conference. I became the virtual arrangements, but I really and I think this relates to what I may say a little later if we talk about attending experiences, like the amount of time I had to be able to put into organizing at a time in the pandemic where I didn't have childcare and I was working and trying to move everything online. I really the massivest of massive shout outs to the general chair and the program chair for that conference, because they pretty much did all the work of organizing that. But I remember some of the conversations we were having that I hope the conversations that persist post-pandemic were what actually matters at a conference, right? And so much of the conversation that we often have in conference organizers, okay, what sessions are going to be there, and will the talks be 15 minutes or 18 minutes long, and will right, will the coffee breaks be 10 or 15 minutes, and are there slides or posters or both? And I think AID came to a nice solution in terms of delivering the technical program, and I think that went well. But in my mind, the big questions are still like, even before the pandemic, I was getting frustrated in my own conference organizing experience. Like, it seems like these are pedagogically broken, right? Like, no one does the reading ahead of the lecture. and so the lecture is just like people in the audience trying to like absorb all of the research in like a 15-minute spouting from the podium experience, which like we know through teaching, for those of us who do research and who are also teachers, like we know that that isn't how people learn. And I think one thing that I saw that was sort of like a side effect of a desire to allow people to pre-record talks, so that we didn't have to deal with technical difficulties. And like, by the way, time zones are a thing, right? Like, in letting people pre-record talks, we actually started to see more pedagogically interesting things happening because the speaker could like type into the chat at the same time. There could be like this like weird like quasi live Q&A discussion during the talk. People were like throwing links to other things it reminded them of into the chat. Like, that's something that I really like about the move to online delivery that I hope persists, right? So this different way of thinking about like, what's the actual useful way for us to be able to have conversations about our research, so that we're not just like sitting in a massive lecture hall listening to talks forever again. Like, I don't want to go back to that.
Like, one of the things I really liked was looking at some of the videos. I mean, I've only managed to make it to a couple of conferences, but one of the things I really liked was some of the videos went a very different approach. It wasn't just this, I'm going to regurgitate the paper to you in 18 minutes or less, which sometimes, depending on the speaker, that works, and it works really well, and other times it really doesn't. And so it was really great to see, much like, I guess, again, for a lot of researchers who also teach, you're having to also do a lot. I imagine a lot of people have kind of embraced a flipped classroom paradigm and doing a lot of lectures as videos right now. And so the videos were actually quite interesting and more about getting you engaged in the research itself. And then, hey, the paper's already out there, you can go and read that in your own time, rather than going through this rote section by section thing, which that feels like something that could really also tap into a broader audience, particularly given the opportunity, like you say, with the VR conference and a lot of other conferences that are allowing for much more students and general public to like engage with it as well.
And accessibility options. That was a huge thing that I see not only at IEEE VR, but I've also helped with the various online conferences that the IGDA, GRUX, SIG, in fact, they're doing their North American conference, which I did not help with that one. That's happening today. Is you get to use different accessibility options. Google Slides has a pretty good live transcription that people would use. Of course, PowerPoint does this as well. And then having different modalities, as long as they're visual or audio, to be able to convey what you're trying to say. A number of people that I've interviewed for that research at IEEE VR were saying that they are excluded from conferences, not only because of financial reasons, or they're in parts of the world where it's difficult just to get flights to a lot of the places where conferences happen, but that they can't hear it quite well, or in a busy environment where there's a lot of background noise, it's difficult to focus in on one type of conversation. A lot of cognitive disabilities too, people said it was really good for them because they could play something back. They could watch a section over again. We had poster rooms in Mozilla Hubs. We had a hoarder who was going through and he saved every single poster. So the posters were rendered as a PDF in front, and the little person would stand next to their poster and present it. And someone said, I don't know when I'm going to need these in the future, so I'm just going to save all of them to a file. But it also let them and biggen it, make it bigger, look at the pictures a bit closer. And I think that's something that a lot of people, we've all acquired some kind of weird habits when we go to poster sessions where you're trying to get at a distance if you actually want to engage with that. Is that something I want to get kind of stuck here for a little while? But with the virtual environment, you could just save it at a distance. You could overhear, you can move away, and there wasn't a lot of the social awkwardness. Again, I'm talking about a web-based VR system. There wasn't a lot of awkwardness of like, I've made eye contact, I have to stand here now. And maybe your attention is wandering, or you're having some stimulation overload because it's generally very noisy in those environments.
Yeah, absolutely, the accessibility. And it's like this weird paradox, right? Of a global pandemic made us make our conferences more accessible. And I'm certain that we have not actually made our conferences more accessible, because I think not in all of the possible ways, because I think we've like had this weird accessibility as a byproduct rather than, and certainly like more people I know are having conversations about accessible design and how to make things work for as many people as possible, but some of them have sort of like accidentally come along. And I know a lot of people, myself included, have been like, even captioning, I didn't realize how much I needed it until the pandemic, when all of a sudden everyone was captioning, or it was possible for me to auto do it. And I'm like, wow, this lets me focus in a way that I didn't even realize I wasn't focusing before. But now that I have it, it's here. And I'd love to see more intentionality go into that. My fear is that we're going to be so excited to be able to get back together in spaces with each other in person again, that I hope we don't lose what we've learned. And also, like, I learned, and maybe this is getting into attendance, maybe we don't want to talk about it yet. Like, I learned that I don't want to travel to conferences anymore.
I do.
I do. I do and I don't, right? I do because I miss people, and I miss being able to interact with people. I miss the conversations that come when you're able to like smoothly move between spaces, and when you can devote your focus to that conversation that comes from being in the same space with the same person. Yeah. But also, like, it became very clear to me that I had been traveling too much pre-pandemic, and I don't want to go back to that, right? Like, I don't think it was good for my mental health or for my family or for my physical health. Like, I think it made the level of overcommitment more clear, because suddenly I was trying to like be at a conference and be doing my job at the same time, and what was impossible like forced me to make choices in a way that, I don't know, I think I was just trying to do it all. So I miss humans. I miss talking to adults who are not living in the same house as me. But as much as I love talking to my husband, I need more than just him in person to talk to. But I don't miss all the travel all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I already said this before you came on about the ridiculousness of flying halfway across the planet to deliver. Like, my first conference in my entire academic career was in Honolulu. I was doing my Ph.D. in Scotland. I did a 27-hour journey for a poster paper.
Wow.
On one hand,
did you like being in the conference center?
On one hand, it was a great experience. I had so much fun. On the other hand, that was the most anxiety-laced journey I've ever been on. Because I'm like, I was a complete fish out of water. I was, in terms of that experience, and something that you said already there about the, Laura, particularly about the poster session, allowing people to come in and just download stuff and have a read of it. I was also thinking about it from the perspective of the student or researcher who's presenting the poster, because also that's quite an awkward social scenario to find yourself in, as everyone is trying to kind of glance by and catch the paper, and they're like, well, I can kind of see enough here, but they don't want to get into that social element. And of course, as the person with the paper, you're standing there like, oh, for the love of God, make up your mind, talk to me, or please go away.
Like, my advisor made me practice the 3-minute pitch for this.
Please let me do it.
I want someone to talk to me.
I just remember standing next to posters and being like, let me know if you have any questions.
Yes.
So awkward.
And then
so
they walk away and you're like, you reject
I'm
my
a failure. They didn't
And then there's the poster across the way that has everyone around it, and it's both relieving, and also you start to devalue yourself. You're like, what about their poster is attractive? Also, I'm really glad there's not 20 people around my poster.
Exactly. And it's interesting you mentioned travel, Gillian. I know that I have very conflicted emotions around it, because I too love to travel and I like seeing new places and I like seeing people in person. But then whenever there was downtime, like the thought of traveling to say go visit my family, I'm just like, the last thing I want to do is get on a plane right now. Whereas now I'm like, I haven't traveled in a year, and I'm like, I want to go visit my family. So there's that as well. So I'm curious, you've sort of brought up some of these things already, but how do you think that conferences should be approached in the future? As we're going to start, I'm sure people are going to start having them in person again, but how can we retain some of that accessibility that you've been talking about, and like that community aspect with accessibility? Like, how can we find ways to make that work? Just solve all the problems. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, what universities have tried to do is this hybrid model. And even before the pandemic, some conferences had tried a hybrid model. I think it gives publishers and professional organizations total fits, because what does that pay model even look like? In the same way that universities are also going, oh no, if someone's not on campus, can we ethically charge them fees for the pool and the gym and all of that? But having a hybrid model, if that would be at all possible, that's pretty cool, because when we had people rank this question of why do people even go to conferences, because you get excited, you're like, I'm going to go to this talk, I'm going to go to this talk, and it's so much, and by the end of the day you don't remember what you've been to, what day it was that you went to it, and what those findings were, even though you swear you're going to go home and read that paper and share it out with your group. So the top reasons why people said they go to conferences are to experience that collegial atmosphere with the cohort of people, that network of people that they already know. FDG is my favorite conference because that's where Roger Altizer and Jose Zagal and like all of my people are. And the speaking part is great, but that's kind of the part that jettisons out of my head unless I actively do something about it. So in terms of accessibility, allowing people who can't travel for a variety of reasons, family care, it would be very cool if we could have a virtual format where these things are streamed and people can still participate. Maybe there's some way that you could do a mixed online and in-person social, because the social aspect is so important. But I don't know if that is really going to be adopted, because obviously that puts even more onus on organizers to now support two formats and have the organization breathing down their neck of like, well, how much are you going to charge them? So I don't know that there's really a good possibility, but that would be a really equitable one. I just don't know if it'll ever happen. It would be great if it did.
Yeah, I agree with everything Laura said. One piece to me that I've been grappling with in my head is like, what if we decoupled conference attendance from publication practice? So there's an awkward thing that happens, especially in the more CS-oriented venues, right, where conferences are still computer science's primary publication mechanism, of like, to be able to publish my work, I or one of my students or one of my collaborators needs to be able to travel and pay for the thing. And it's this weird thing, right, where what we're hearing is that what people like the most is the ability to connect and be social and talk through sort of the grand challenges of our discipline, or talk through the nitty-gritty details of the minor challenges of our disciplines, right, like whatever it is. I don't, like, not that many people seem to be saying the main reason I go to a conference is to be able to hear all the talks, right? And so why is that the linkage that we have, right? Like, I want to be able to, and I guess this is what journals are for, but journal publication timelines are like the longest thing in the world. Or maybe this is what middle state publication venues are, like some space between academic publishing and like journalistic publishing, right? But some way of being able to say, like, here's a conference and we want people to be able to come, and if you can come in person, that's fantastic. Otherwise, we'll find some way for you to be able to participate without coming in person, where the goal is to be able to have meaningful conversation and collaboration, instead of let us sit in the overly air-conditioned room for an hour and a half and then we'll have a 15-minute coffee break where everyone gets really involved in conversations and then skips the next session because they still want to be talking to the people that they just saw, right? It's not fair to anyone. There has to be a better way, but I think then it comes back to the money question that Laura raised of how do we incentivize people to show up, and conferences cost money to put on and to host, and therefore there are registration fees. But I wonder if we could look to like some of our other like sister disciplines instead of computer science, right? Like in many of the humanities disciplines, they have one big meeting conference that everyone goes to. And so that can be your trip if you wanted to be your trip. And then there's like little symposia or like localized things. Like it would be much easier for me to like go to the New England area hub of the like multi-place thing, so I can still sleep in my own bed at night and see people, but like not need to travel. I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of room for innovation, but it takes a lot of time to be able to do that.
It's very slow, turning ship.
Change is really slow,
It also...
go ahead, Tommy.
Well, one of the things I find really interesting about that, and not to lead too much into our segment after this, is it also the publication mandate for conference attendance is also a form of gatekeeping. So you often have a lot of PhD students who would love to go to one of these events, but it's you need to get that paper out. Yeah. And then is the paper accepted? Were you then able to find the money? Certainly, of course, all the travel concerns, particularly depending on, particularly a lot of conferences run in the EU or they run in, the United States, and then that can become a visa requirement issue for a lot of people. And so subsequently, you have a lot of people who are active researchers in this field who are then on the outside looking in the whole time. And I think certainly, like speaking to what you were saying there's this great opportunity either by virtual or by physical to just enable people to either get past the travel barrier or get by the publication barrier and just be able to sit with the people whose work they've admired and they're actually really invested in, and to be able to have those conversations. Because again, like I think like everybody here, like most of my strongest memories from going to conferences are the conversations that happened around the talks. Occasionally there was one or two good talk, but I'm sure one of them was by yourselves, obviously. But,
it'd be interesting to know if the numbers have been up for conferences in the last year, just because there isn't that travel and a lot of conferences have lowered the price point. And so people who don't have papers, sure, I'll pay $25 and I'll pay out of pocket for all of my grad students to be able to go to these conferences and see the talks, go to the community events, etc. So I think there's definitely something there.
I've seen a weird thing happening though, where we'll have a lot of registrants, but the actual attendees are fairly low because everybody can register for $20. We're so zoomed out that you get excited about it, and then that time hits and you're like, oh, well, there's probably a VOD on YouTube later. Maybe I'll go and watch that. And it's made it really difficult for organizers to understand what was my attendance anyway, because I sold 1,000 tickets. We had 200 people active in the Discord, 100 in the Twitch. Of course, people are streaming it on all different platforms. And you have to go back and see, well, how many hits did it get on YouTube? And then following week, 2 weeks, month, are those unique users? It's very confusing to know if it is up, because we can all just sit in our underwear on the couch and go to a conference. I don't know. The attrition from registrants to attendees, it's about 30 to 50%. I found that actually show up.
I would say that may not be too far off from at least. So a number of people will register for the conference, but then when you actually go to the talk sessions, certainly not everybody is there.
And time zones. A lot of it is time zones. And people, you're in Finland and it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you might watch it later, but where's the link? Are they going to be posted right away? Do I have to keep checking to see when it's going to be posted? The time zone equity thing, I guess, is just not a problem that can be solved other than saying it will be posted to YouTube. The onus is now on you. Go find it.
That is hard. Yeah. Of course, because it's virtual, I think a lot of people didn't take off time from work. And so then trying to balance going to a conference and working, it's like, oh man, we're going to have to normalize taking time off for virtual conferences.
I heard so many kids in the background in Mozilla hubs of like all women mostly of like, Mom, where's my calculator? Or that's not something kids have probably asked in decades, but you know, the asking questions, run the dishwasher, dogs barking. That's the benefit is that, yeah, you get to stay at home, but the downside is that you're still checking your email and someone rang the doorbell and the dog's going crazy. All of those things are happening while you're at the conference.
I literally attended a conference session while giving my 5-year-old and 1-year-old a bath.
Whoa. I don't know if that's dedication.
That's hardcore.
It's got to get done.
So the reason I did it, right, and I wouldn't normally, and so I say that not to say like, look at me, amazing supermom. Like, I think it's problematic that this is happening, but I did it because the session that I most wanted to go to and the conversation that I most wanted to see coincided with my kids' bath time, and my partner wasn't available to be able to do it. And so now I'm trapped and I have to do it. And I was willing to do it in that case. There are many, 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 many other times where I have said, no, I can't do it. I need to take care of my kids. And to the point that I think now people are like hyper aware of the fact that I have children. I'm a little self-conscious about it. But so I don't want to normalize that behavior. At the same time, something I liked about virtual conferences was that I didn't need to go to all of it, that I could. So not only did I go to that session while giving my kids a bath, I didn't go to any of the other ones because that was the only one I really wanted to go to and be able to see what the conversation was. The others I was willing to relegate to watching the YouTube video later. And so like, I hear you that there's a massive mismatch in registrants versus attendees, but like, I kind of like the drop-in flexibility that you get of being able to choose how you're going to engage with the conference. And I don't know, I've been to very, very few virtual conferences this year because I'm zoomed out and childcare and teaching in a pandemic is hard, and right, living in a pandemic is hard, right, like all the things. But the ones I've gone to, I pretty much have entirely done as drop in 5-10 minutes here and there. Hey, it's so great to see you, thank you for the talk, I loved it, I'd love to catch up with you later, let's schedule a separate Zoom call for next week when we're both less busy, right? Like that level of engagement I've appreciated. I wish we could design for that instead of design the 5-day behemoths, right? That no one can wipe that space from their schedule unless they're traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And again, it's interesting because again, it comes back to that social pressure as well. Because when you travel all the way to that event, there's then this expectation to be seen. Okay, you know, what happens if you just didn't turn up for the whole day? Oh, right. You know, naturally, a lot of people are just going to be like, okay, I hope they're okay, and I hope it's not like a health issue or whatever. But again, PhD students and the like are going to be. I did this in my earlier conferences. I was turning up to every session because I'm like, I need to be seen to be there. And then I had a hangover, if I remember right, on the last day, and I missed half of it. I know.
Who does that at a conference?
At a conference. I really bring it down. I think I really bring down the quality of the academic discourse. I mean, I tend to do that anyway. But yeah, that was not ideal. Anywho, I would love to actually continue talking about this for another half an hour, 40 minutes. This has been absolutely brilliant. But we would have to say goodbye for now, as we have even more guests to come and join us. But Gillian, Laura, lovely to chat with you both. And great to see you, and thank you so much for joining us this evening or this afternoon, wherever we are.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon. Alrighty. There we go. Wonderful first session. Thank you once again to Gillian and Laura for joining us for this first session. And so this was us, looking at virtual conferences and the challenges of trying to pull that off. And I found that really interesting personally as well, because I've only been able to how many? I think I've only actually attended maybe three virtual conferences in the past 12 months, and each of them had its own set of challenges as a result of where it was in the world, as a result of work issues. Certainly the work issue, that was the one I dealt with a lot because I didn't have any time. So kind of juggling between numerous things. But yeah, so moving on to our second segment, like we were talking about this a lot, like the challenges of engaging in this space, and I was actually thinking a lot about the social elements, particularly for PhD candidates, and so that's what we're talking about in the second half of today's show, is looking at the PhD life according to our top production element. So we've got three guests joining us for this segment. We have Daniela Romano, who is a professor of AI and games at De Montfort University. We have M. Charity, who you might remember from FDG-TV last year, who is also a PhD student at the Game Innovation Lab at New York University. And also, last but most certainly not least, we have Ahmed Khalifa, who is an AI engineer at modl.ai and soon to be a lecturer at the University of Malta. We'll do the obligatory welcome and then pass over to everyone. How are we all doing?
Hello.
Welcome. I think I got everybody there. And Anne's back as well.
Yes.
As my charming
Awesome.
co-host.
Thanks, Tommy. Yes, welcome everyone. And thank you for joining us tonight. So for those of you who are just joining us, we just finished talking about conferences and how they've been virtual in the last year. And so we're kind of continuing that conversation a little bit, but more from looking at the doctoral experience at conferences, and also just how it's been over the last year, not even related to conferences, but I'm sure that things have been, there've been unique challenges. So have any of you, have you ever attended a doctoral consortium during your PhD? And if so, what worked well? What didn't work so well? And I'll start with you, Daniela, just because I assume that you have maybe been to a few more than some of our PhD students.
The elderly generation. Yeah, so I was, well, of course, I've attended the doctoral consortium and I've been a mentor in the recent year. But if I go back to my PhD time, it wasn't called doctoral consortium, but when I went in my second year to a conference, as I was explaining actually in the pre-room to this live, I have met a more senior researcher who was a professor at the time, and by talking to him, he really opened my eyes on the possibility, and that made me expand the research that I was doing for my PhD. So what is a doctoral consortium? It's basically a podium or a place where you can have an audience, which is is an expert audience. Usually they are experts in the field with a higher level of seniority that provide you feedback to your current state of the PhD. So you will have to submit a description according to the doctoral consortium, might be shorter or longer. And then you will have to present your research and you will receive a feedback. I think this is very important because it goes beyond what your supervisor or your research group might be talking about, right? So that you can see what's happening, especially if it's an international audience, then you can see we are here in US, UK, or whatever is happening in Europe, and you can get feedback from a diversity of experts. Okay.
Yeah. I actually found my external PhD advisor at the FDG doctoral consortium quite a few years back.
Sure, it wasn't that long ago. It was recent history, Anne, of course.
Okay.
You're a seasoned graduate. You're a seasoned graduate who graduated recently.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, come to think of it. I think I actually, it's in double digits now over here. Oh, good.
Yes.
Anyway,
It's double digits. talk as well.
To greener pastures, certainly. So one of the things we were talking about a little in the last segment was particularly conferences and the kind of virtual environment. And like as a PhD student, I'm really curious like how that's been. So like I know you were with us at FDG last year, and like how was your experience? Like was that your first conference, and like what was the experience of like attending that kind of virtual environment?
It was so COG was my first conference just because it like happened before. But
So it was. I
yeah,
couldn't even remember.
It was so long ago. I really felt like 2 years ago, but it was just last year. But yeah, FDG was like my second conference, but COG was also virtual. So like all the conferences that I've been to so far have just been virtual. So I've never had like a in-person experience of like meeting people face to face or like just socializing like outside of going to attend presentations. But FDG was by far my favorite. I attended AID later that year. And AID was interesting too, but like FDG really like I felt that like socialness like with the Discord and just seeing everybody's like presentations on like the Discord and the Zoom channels. And I was like, whoa, this is cool. It's still virtual. So I know like this is like just the tip of the iceberg for what I can really experience with like a conference. So I'm excited to like see everybody in person, but at the same time, I'm like still excited about the virtual conferences coming up.
Like there's actually a kind of really interesting like flip to the usual dynamic because you've actually now got to know a lot of people in the community and people have got to know you as well, and then it's going to be that really weird case of, oh hey, like we're now actually getting to meet in person, but we already know each other, rather than the usual social dance that you have as a bunch of PhD students coming in going, well, I recognize that person based on the name tag, should I go and talk to them now? And actually, for both and Ahmed, Gillian to Galius, I knew because a lot of my early PhD research was based on his, and so we were doing similar things, and I'm kind of seeing him like, do I go and talk to that guy? I don't know if I should go and talk to that guy. Maybe I should go and talk. And then he came over and talked to me in the way that he does, so that solved that particular social quandary.
I'm definitely gonna have that like twice fold when we have in person. It's like I've seen you on Zoom but never in person, so like I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh dear. Ahmed, what about yourself? Like how's the last year been, particularly for yourself as well, because you were completing your PhD? And congratulations.
Congratulations.
It's more crazy. Like in my point of view, it was less comfortable virtual conferences. I don't know if it's because of the timing, because I was finishing also my PhD and was having a lot of stuff. Like some of the conferences happened during the time I'm finalizing the thesis itself. And I was like stressed by it, stressed by trying to find the job, stressed by tons of other stuff. So I don't know if it was a part of the factor, but like I enjoy the conferences in person because I feel like I'm focused in the area itself, and I always like get distracted when I'm on my laptop. And maybe I'm a little bit old. Also, Discord for me is very confusing. A lot of people talking at the same time, and I can't read all the stuff that's happening, and I can't have even time to talk to people that much. So I talked a little bit with some people there about some work I liked, but I just was not the most enjoyable year for me.
Yeah, I can totally appreciate, like for myself, like I've had to learn how to Discord, I guess. I run my own server, so it's like, all right, well, I kind of need to join the AI and Games Discord server. We have a lot of people in the community now. But yeah, like that's just such a weird space to kind of operate within. And I guess it's also like both of you, I guess, have very different dynamics here because one of you is coming into the community and getting to know people. You're, I wouldn't say coming out, more sort of, I've been here for a while. You're going through that phase of trying to complete and transition over to the next phase of your career. But I mean, I guess that kind of speaks to what the next kind of question that we had really for you was like, what's the big challenge that you think has like for this year? What's the thing going into these events has been the biggest concern for yourselves? And actually, I'm going to ask Daniela first because, you know, as you said, like you've been in this community for a while and you're used to operating within this environment and then trying to operate doctoral consortiums and working with PhD students. How does that dynamic change as a result of this setup?
Yeah, so I think it depends very much on the environment in which you have the conference. So if it's just a passive place when you're listening to people that are online, then it might be, yes, it's interesting, the paper are interesting, but you miss out on the social. So, but there are new conferences that are trying to involve people in making social stuff. And in the pre-room, we were saying we should have a game room. Just because, come on, can you have a game conference without games?
We're not very good at this, are we? Like, historically, we're not very good at playing games at game conferences.
Yeah, but we might nowadays, because we are online, bored at home, right? So, so the main difference is the social. So we need to find a way to meet people and have social conversation that then might allow you to have further, relationship, research, or whatever, because the conference is the point where you meet your peers, but you meet also other people with whom you might, submit grants, or, you might work together on a paper, or you might even get a job, right? So I think it's your way to be exposed to the world, not only your research, of course, but then they can see there is a human being behind that research, and that counts too a lot of the time. Yeah, that's why we're doing this online, isn't it? To see you are, I am, I exist.
Yeah, that social aspect came up a lot when we were talking about conferences with Laura and Gillian just a little bit ago. But Laura has been doing some research around this, and I hope I'm not going to be in trouble for mentioning this, but she has this term campfire effect, in which she talks about how having something to tend can really remove a lot of the awkwardness from social situations, and finding different ways that digital, like different programs, like Gatherly, GatherTown, hubs, Mozilla hubs, etc., finding ways to employ that so that that whole awkwardness where you're in a social setting and you're all on Zoom and that silence happens, but if you have something to tend, it kind of carries you through. And I think games are a great example of that. So being able to play tabletop games or even video games, I think that's a great idea.
I remember there was even the weird one last year at FDG where there was a watch party for FDG-TV. And that was a very weird thing. Like, we actually noticed it in the Discord server. There was a bunch of people sitting, chatting, watching us talk to each other. And I mean, yeah, like if we're providing that mechanism, it's like cool. But yeah, that was a very weird thing because you're not used to that, because it's the complete antithesis of the conference environment where it's like someone's talking up on the podium. We all need to shut up now for the next 18 minutes, 15 to 18 minutes until the Q&A bit starts. But yeah, like, I mean, for yourselves, like, what was, like, you said already, like, particularly the social element. Was it the Discord that you found was that the thing that you found, like, really worked particularly well in the context of FDG versus, like, some of the other, because I didn't actually attend AID. Like, did they have a similar kind of social setup?
AID did, but I don't know, it just didn't hit the same way as, like, FDG did. Like, I could see everybody in the the participants list on the side and be like, oh, I just saw their talk. Like, I can go ask them questions. And like, even after I had my own talk about my Mechaleaks paper, like somebody like direct messaged me in the chat and was like, hey, like, I really liked your paper. Like, what about, I had a question about this and this. I was like, well, that's really cool. That's like if somebody like just came up to me and just like asked me a question. But like, yeah, I like that, but I know it's going to be even better like in person. But I mean, as a PhD student, just like having that collaboration with like, oh, I can meet other PhD students or like other people that like did papers on stuff that I'm interested in. It's like having the opportunity to go up to them and be like, hey, I want to like work with you on something. Like, this is a really cool concept. Like, I don't have that yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, I need that.
Like, I guess speaking to that, particularly about kind of your building collaborations and relationships, like as someone who's starting or still in the earlier phases as well, how's that been for you over the past year? Because you don't get to interact with like your peers in your lab or your supervisor in the way that you're used to. Like, how's that been for you?
It's been really like sad. Like Ahmed used to sit right behind me, like in the lab, and like he would look over my shoulder and see if I was like working on a game or working on some code. He'd be like, hey, you know, you can like implement this and it'll make it like a lot faster. Like, oh, have you tried like implementing this feature? I'll be like, that's genius. Like I should do that. And then it make my project like that much better. But like I don't have that anymore because it's just me, my cat sitting behind me, and she can't like talk to me and she just judges me. So like, yeah, I miss that, just like being in, just even if we're not talking to each other, just being around each other and be like, hey, we're all working on like really cool projects around each other and we can all like build off each other. So I can't wait to get back to lab.
I love your optimism, because I was just thinking like common suffrage, and you're like, oh no, we're all doing cool things at the same time, and I'm thinking, oh no, we're all sitting there like, oh god, we're just competitive for this.
I mean, we are sitting like that, but like the end product's going to be cool. So we just got to keep thinking it's going to be awesome.
I love your optimism. Keep that energy going. That's going to see you through. Absolutely.
That's not only the saying, like we also, like when we are sitting in the same environment and we are just bored, we just go play a game, do anything. Yeah. While at that right now, it's just when I get bored, it's just like, I just open my Switch and try to play online game or something. It doesn't feel the same. While in the lab, we had like a huge amount of board games. We just like, let's drag one of these board games and try a new one, which was like, sometimes it just helped to break the tension when you're working, and then you can solve your problems a lot easier. Like, and a lot of my collaboration with people in the lab started from playing a board game and just like, that game is super nice. Let's try to do something similar to that or something based on that. So
it's funny. I think about we had a foosball table. We used to play that a lot, and then actually the head of our lab had it removed.
Oh, why?
Because it wasn't that we played it too much, but it actually got to the point that it was the mechanism through which we solved every major decision.
That's even less reason to get rid of it then. Like.
Exactly, right? You know, it's like, are we going to go for dinner here or here? Are we going to have a drink here or here? And it was like, okay, we're going to solve it first to 5 at the foosball table. Yeah. We also did minor property damage, which I'm reluctant to bring up.
That's was minor side effect.
I think it speaks to the issues of dealing with a computer science lab, and it's predominantly young men, and so a lot of wrestling going on at times, which was not appropriate. Which was not, Anne's just dying a little inside, but not with me.
I had rock band.
Football table champion when I was in my teens. So it's not. I don't know. Maybe we are made for the games.
So
I agree.
Just thinking, like, particularly with the year that we've had, and I want, coming back to Daniela and like your role as an advisor and supervisor, and of course, and you can also speak to this as well. Like, but what do you think is like, the challenges that you find now as a PhD supervisor? Do you feel that there's a different set of challenges you experience now in this environment versus what you traditionally would have even a couple of years ago?
Well, I would say the supervision hasn't really changed. I just have a new PhD student. We started completely online, so we never met face to face. And really the work is done in the same way as far as supervision, discussion, and so on. So I don't think that changes. What changes is if you're going to do experiment with, involving humans. Okay, So we're trying to find all sorts of creative way of doing it. And there is a website, I can't remember the name now, for example, where you can advertise, and people that have got headset or particular solution, go there and say, I've got this and this, so I can participate to experiment online. Or you have to find creative way of doing it outdoor, or we've been thinking all sorts of possibilities.
How do we solve this?
Yeah, how do we solve this? And there is even research call on how to do research with human. Yeah, if you look online, at least in the UK, they have they've issued a call for a project that would study how do we do research now, right? If you're going to do it virtually. And I think it's interesting, but not impossible to overcome. You just need to be a bit more creative, right? And maybe is a good excuse to really find new paradigm, who knows? So yeah, I always see changes as an opportunity. So this is now this opportunity to do better than before. Let's embrace it.
Absolutely. And I guess really for our two PhD recent graduate and ongoing candidate, like I was going to ask you both, Ahmed, I think I'd throw it to yourself first. Like, what advice would you have, you know, particularly thinking about the challenges you face as a grad student? How have they changed, particularly over the past couple of years? And like, what advice would you give to maybe both, you know, particularly to advisors and supervisors? Like, how do you feel that they can help you, like, as in this particular type of environment? And has any of that advice changed, I guess, versus how it would have been even a year ago? Other than read your inbox a bit more frequently. Because I know Gillian's really guilty of that.
So like I don't know, like one of the things that I feel is just annoying in the virtual environment for me is Zoom meetings. For some reason, they are so exhausting compared to actual meetings. I have the same amount of meetings before and after, like now and before, and then right now I just have the same amount of meetings. I just feel like I'm dead for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
I can't do anything. So I don't have a solution for that right now, but like that's one of the things that changed, and I think it's like very not an easy thing to handle right now in these days. But like other stuff, like I think that's also affected like a little bit my productivity. I used to like do multiple stuff, talk to different people, make a lot of more collaborations with different people, because I can just in the same location, or I can just like meet someone around, just talk to them. And right now I just like feel like exhausted to open a new Zoom meeting and just talk to someone to start a new project. So I was like, oh, let's just focus on one or two, so I just don't increase the number of my meetings.
It's like maintaining that social element. Again, it comes back to what we were saying even in the last chat about the social element. And I do feel bad because I brought you into a Zoom meeting for the purposes of this live stream. So
at the end of the day, I'm in Egypt, so it's the end of the day. I'm relaxed right now.
Like, it's all good. It's fine. It's fine. But yeah, thank you for that. But yeah, like what would you think? What do you think? Is there any advice you would give to new PhD students based on your experience that you've had?
Well, when I started, you know, I had that like first year burst of energy. I was like, I'm gonna publish like 10 papers within my first year, and I got like 4. So I but then once
pretty damn good.
It's pretty good. Like I was like, but the problem was like once like I got into my second year, I was like, man, I had 4 papers last year. Like I want 4 again this year, and I didn't have like any. So I was like, oh man, like I don't know if it was because of the pandemic or like just because like I ran out of steam, but like at the same time, I'm like, you know, everybody's going through it right now. Like it's tough to like just like do work and like stay productive at that level, because like you're in your home the entire time. So it's like I get tempted to play video games like every 5 minutes because it's just right there next to me, like versus doing work. So I guess the best advice I'd have for like PhD students who are either like Ahmed that have done most of their PhD like in person and had to do the last bit like online, or like if you just did it completely online, just don't beat yourself up about productivity levels. You just do what you can. Like it's gonna get done.
Yeah.
Very good advice. I like that.
That was great advice.
Totally agree.
But yes, thank you very much to all of you. I appreciate Ahmed. I think you're a little bit later than the rest of us. You're probably looking forward to going for a nap.
We call that going to bed, actually.
Yes, there is that. I was trying to dance around the issue. I was trying to be
some 8-hour nap.
Yeah, just an 8-hour nap. It's a power nap. That's it.
It's a good power nap.
Just recharge. That's a really good power nap. But yes, you know, Ahmed, Daniela, thank you so much for joining us. Also great to see you all. I'm glad to see that you're all doing well, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll find you again in a minute. Yes, thank you very much to everyone joining us. But yeah, like, certainly, like I think M's last comment there about maintaining your energy and maintaining your productivity is incredibly difficult, and particularly when you're doing a lot of different things in a similar time, being able to balance all those different challenges. And certainly I think a lot of our researchers who are teaching are also dealing with the challenges of trying to just deal with the reality of trying to teach a class while also researching. And I mean, I've been there, where your research productivity fluctuates even outside of the current dynamic. Hello, Anne, you're back.
Hello.
But yeah, have you had that? Like, I've had that where I've had years where I've published like a ridiculous number of papers, and the following year I published one. Because it was just a confluence of factors, because it could be something you were working on for 2 years finally matured in some way, and then it's like, oh yeah, great.
Yeah, I definitely get the waves. There'll be 1 year where I publish, every project I'm on somehow is ready for publication. And then the next year I'm like, what's happened? Like, there's nothing to talk about anymore. And so I just try to focus on researching that year and hope it all evens out in the end.
I'm sure it does. How's it been for you in the last year or so?
Oh, real simple. Pandemic, no problem. I'm sorry, that's sarcasm. This last year has sucked so badly.
Oh, I know. It's very weird for me because I'm not a publishing researcher really anymore. Like, I actually base it largely on YouTube episodes I get out. It's like, did I get a YouTube episode out in the last 4 or 5 weeks? Then that's to me a good sign of productivity. But even then, I realize that that's an incredibly damaging thing because I have so many other things going on that I'm basing it entirely on an externally viewed mechanism. So it's publications all over again, which isn't pragmatic. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty good show. We had wonderful guests. They all had lovely things to say.
Yeah, we should have them more often.
We should have them more often and less of me,
I was
certainly.
say maybe we can have them host and co-host, and we'll be guests.
I don't think anyone wants us back at this point. I think everyone's going to be like, right, they've done their bit. We got that Scottish guy in. He set it up. He's got us moving. Speaking of, oh no, I thought this was our top production team heckling us, but he actually said something nice, which was entirely unexpected.
It might be the cider speaking at this point.
But yeah, I think this is effectively us wrapping up for what has been, I think, a very good. I realise I'm now just blowing it out of proportion, but I thought that was really great. I really enjoyed both of those conversations, and I really tried to shut up as much as possible because I thought, let the smart people talk.
Commendable.
Yes, highly commendable. But also, a thank you to our, first of all, again, a thank you to Gillian, to Laura, to Daniela, and Ahmed, who are all wonderful. Thank you to you, and of course, for being
thank you to you,
my
Tommy.
Lovely host. We are each one another's respective lovely co-hosts, I like to think. I do find it funny in the production notes, it says that I'm the lovely accented host, which you're the one with the accent. So I don't know what the problem is. I will take a moment, actually, thank you to our top production team. So Antonius Liapis is at the back heckling us on the Discord chat as we speak. But also a shout out to Mike Cook, who couldn't be with us on the production side this evening, but is responsible for essentially inviting
making
all of our
happen.
guests and making it all happen. Mike actually organises the show before it happens, and then it's really just the job of the remaining 3 of us to actually make the live event happen. So without Mike, we don't actually get any of this to work.
Pretty much.
Also, a thank you to all of you who have tuned in and watched. And if you're watching it afterwards on the VOD, hello to you as well, because time zones and personal family obligations mean you might not have had time to tune in live, because that's what we've just been talking about. Let's see, what does that say? Next episode, unknown if what we're going to do before the conference. Just keep yourself updated by subscribing. I don't think I was supposed to read that out, but I thought it was important that I do it anyway.
I mean, it is bolded in all caps.
It is. I would screenshot it if I could, but that's too much level of production.
Woo!
Good
Sam
timing.
yes. Sam would like us to wrap up,
Sam's like, get it done. I want my dinner. But yes, thank you all to everyone. Please do keep an eye out. Subscribe here to the channel for more of the live streams and other video content as it goes live. Be sure to keep an eye on the FDG conference website for further updates on the event itself. And take care of yourselves, and we'll see you all again soon. I'm not doing the zoom in. I'm just going to do the wave.
Bye,
Bye-bye.